A very happy new year and a very good evening to all those who are joining in for the second PIM Monthly Montage. I'm Travis Perera, Senior Lecturer at PIM, and it is my pleasure to be the Zoom Master for the second consecutive PIM Monthly Montage, where we intend to utilize the perfect blend of academic excellence and industry expertise to give you an idea about the latest business world, what's going on out there, so that it can shape you in making your business decisions in this very competitive, complex, and chaotic business world. Now, our first PIM Monthly Montage was dedicated towards navigating the global business map. Today, we speak of a very pertinent issue, but something which we tend to miss out. In a world where corporate boardroom decision making is filled with mind maps, diagrams, charts, and reports, we tend to forget that at the end of the day, what the customer truly wants is good value. One might think, I use the same inputs just like my competitor, and the product I give is almost the same. Where do I differentiate? My friends, that's where the question of value comes into the picture. And today, within the course of the next 60 minutes, PIM will be making you rethink the value that you add to your customers and hopefully giving you the insights required to take the value you provide to your customers in a new paradigm, in a new direction, something that will give you the advantage of differentiation. And to do this, we have an excellent panel, as always. PIM as the management mentor, the nation's management mentor, is having no shortage of experienced academics with great industry exposure and with a very strong alumni of students who, once they pass out from our MBA and other programs, go on to the industry and become the thought leaders, the market movers and shakers, not only in Sri Lanka, but worldwide. And it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce to you the panel today. As always, we have as the moderator of this session, we have the director of PIM, Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri, who is a visionary leader, someone who has taken PIM in a new direction under his leadership and guidance, who is also a much sought after member in the academic and corporate training arena in Sri Lanka and around the world in the area of soft skills development, leadership development, and human capital transformation. Director, it's an honor to have you on the panel this evening. We also have Dr. Travis Perera, who is a veteran in the field of business development and leadership, someone who has guided countless number of students who come in as students but go out as industry leaders, shaping how they think, making them rethink and relearn what they know, and making them ready to be industry transformers. Dr. Travis Perera, it's a pleasure to have you on the panel as well this evening. And PIM is known for the perfect blend of academic and corporate excellence. And today, the guest we have from the industry is indeed one of our former alumni members, Mr. Suranga Hearth, who is the CEO of the English Teashop. And just to give a short introduction about this legendary individual in the field of tea, who is busily engaged in taking the Sri Lankan tea brand name to the rest of the world, we have Mr. Suranga Hearth. He is one of the world's leading, he's the CEO of the English Teashop, which is one of the world's leading organic tea businesses. Suranga is a pioneer of sustainability best practices and has developed a wide range of initiatives designed to improve the livelihoods of communities in the value chain. He's an advocate of making the English Teashop a business which is in the business of people, and that is done through their employee empowerment programs named the Big Game. His ambition is to promote the English Teashop's unique, creating shared value-based business framework amongst the other business leaders. And he believes that by achieving this sustainable competitive advantage with a proper social impact would be the way forward. And indeed, we are proud to announce that He holds his master's degree in business administration from PIM. So Suranga, welcome home. And he is also an alumnus of the Harvard Business School, having completed the Owner President Management Program. Ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat this evening. And I hope the next 60 minutes will transform your thinking in how you can add more value and transform your business. With that introduction, Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri, our moderator for this evening, the forum is yours, sir.
Thank you, Taridu, for that wonderful introduction. Ayubowan, Wanakkam, Assalamu alaikum, good evening. It gives me immense pleasure. We are still experiencing the beginning of new year, and we have gone through the challenges of 2020, and we have just come out of it, and we are having hope, expectations for a better year. I think there's no other time than this to talk about entrepreneurship, the precious ship of entrepreneurship that is sailing through troubled waters in order to ensure excellence through value creation. So this is another significant moment for us to talk about entrepreneurship, because PIM, the only state sector higher education entity that does not take a single cent from the treasury for the past 20 years, had been a center of management excellence, showcasing the entrepreneurship in action. So we celebrate 35 years of existence. And during that 35 plus years, we have produced 350 plus CEOs, including Suranga today, and 3,500 senior managers, and 35,000 inspired professionals one way or the other, perhaps through training, mentoring, coaching, and so on and so forth. So let me straight away turn to Dr. Travis Perera to ask him, to request him to describe the relevance of entrepreneurship in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. In living with the planetary pandemic, how would entrepreneurship be useful, how it would be relevant, how it would be value creating? Over to my beloved teacher, sir, for you.
Thank you, Professor Ajantha. Now, what you mentioned is a very important thing, because the question of survival of a business in the COVID, what the COVID is really is, there is a lot of turbulence in the environment, and there is disruption of supply chains and supply systems and things like that, and even the working of people in organizations. Now, something that's very important in entrepreneurship is that the preferred environment of an entrepreneur is disruption, because in disruption, you begin to see opportunities, because there's a lot of opportunities that are flying around, and some new businesses, new opportunities arrive through this. These opportunities actually come due to various reasons. One is there are social systems that are in kind of disarray. There are production systems in disarray. And therefore, this is an opportunity for an entrepreneur to use his mindset. Basically, the mindset of an entrepreneur is very important to understand. And that is because the mindset, this is a long story actually. It's very important to explain this, because the first interest in entrepreneurs was by economists for the purpose of growth of wealth of nations. And the whole focus was on what is entrepreneurship rather than who is the entrepreneur. But gradually, sociologists came into the scene, and they tried to see, okay, there are sets of people from certain societies, particularly marginalized societies, who want to grow, who want to survive and grow. So sociologists got interested in that. And finally, about 1960s or so, with David McClellan, he was a psychologist from Harvard, and he went into the area of drives. So the drive, some of the drives he spoke about was the need to achieve, the need for power, the need for affiliation, and things like that. The modern writers like Carol Dweck, for example, came out with this word mindset. The mindset, what she says about the mindset is that's quite contrary to a fixed mindset. Quite contrary to a fixed mindset, because a fixed mindset is based on what was available earlier, one's own talents that did not change. So now in a disruptive environment, you don't need that type of mindset because it doesn't work. So you have to now look at a new mindset, which actually requires new talents, new potentials that have to be taken out, and new practices, So this is an opportunity for an entrepreneur to really move in and see these opportunities. The first, to see the opportunities. Second one, to use another aspect of the mindset, which is creativity and innovation, and then find new ways of doing things. And finally, the third one is to take a little bit of risk. Risk is another aspect of the mindset of the entrepreneur. So here is an ideal environment for an entrepreneur. And as you can see today, we are reaching a new norm, a new normal because of new ways. For example, you visit the supermarket less. Things are delivered to your own house. Then cash actually is generally on the web. And even cash is being delivered to homes. So these are new various ways of things. And really, it also helps the growth of other aspects. Like, for example, people seem to be, although there is a lot of health problems and things like that going on, people seem to be having less problems with colds and coughs and things like that. So how this happened really, if you look around, is because of the mindset of entrepreneurs that are kind of encouraged in a situation like that. So answering your question, Professor, is that it is the preferred environment. Disruption is the preferred environment of the entrepreneur.
Thank you, sir. I think that gave us an excellent setting. So entrepreneurs are well set to flourish in order to contribute value. So we have a living example today, Suranga Hearth of English Teashop fame. So Suranga, straight away, let me ask you, how did you enjoy the disruption? How did you take risks? How did you manage the given uncertainty, the given challenges? Over to you, Suranga.
Thank you. First up, Prof, it's a very special day for me because I'm sitting with two of my teachers. You two were my teachers when I started my MBA at PIM in 2004. So it gives me great pleasure to be here today. And while wishing everyone a happy new year and a less disruptive, hopefully a more, happier new year. I fully agree with what Dr. Perera said. I was kind of, thinking as to how we kind of, prepared ourselves for disruptions, because I think I would start by saying that when we killed a fairly successful value-added business in 2010 to launch English Teashop, we were kind of looking into this whole VUCA world. I didn't know the word VUCA there, to be brutally honest. We were seeing symptoms or signs of IR 4.0, and IR 4.0, the way we understood it then, was the whole convergence of the physical, the biological, the digital spheres in an unprecedented manner, and how it was bringing communities together in a way that there was a clear message that if you were to evolve, if you were to survive and be sustainable in this very uncertain domain of IR 4.0, you got to evolve and innovate together as communities. And while there were a lot of things that we didn't know, my definition of IR 4.0 at that time was it was a situation of unknown unknowns. We didn't know what we don't know. I think COVID is also a manifestation of that. So we started thinking about it about 10 years back, and we were kind of developing a strategy that we thought would fit in for IR 4.0. So for me, it was not just about a technological disruption. It was, while there were a lot of unknowns, there were certain things that were very clear to us. There were certain things that we could read clearly. Things like single company top-down innovations were not being, not the key. It is all about entire value chains evolving together and innovating together. And it was not just about customer was king. It was more about collaboration across value chain was king. So these things we kind of built into our strategy from early on, from 2010-11 period, since we launched our new brand after killing the previous business. We also saw that there was a great appetite for brands with purpose. There was great demand for sustainability, ethicality, provenance, and there was purpose behind things. And our understanding of this whole VUCA world, the uncertainty, the COVID, what COVID manifests today, the disruptions that happens at an unprecedented, pace or rate, affecting entire length and breadth of, lives and businesses, and, happening at an exponential speed, whereas the previous industrial revolutions were all about, more linear sort of progression. It was all about trying to see whether we can develop a business that would be community based, not really a socialist or a, charitable business. A new form of ethical capitalism was what we were looking for, and that's what we built. So come COVID, I don't think we really saw a massive, issue in our strategy or the purpose, because we had already, I don't know, to some extent future-proofed ourselves, and we're kind of ready for this disruption. We would go into detail about, some of these things, I'm sure, as we go on, but I would start off by saying, in answer to your question, I guess COVID brought the best out of the English Teashop team to face a world where the top line, vanished for several months, and where we had to completely re-engineer some of the things. But we didn't have to re-engineer our strategy. We didn't have to re-engineer our purpose. I think the answer to your question, Prof, is if you have a strategy that is VUCA ready, and that means quite a sophisticated and a complex situation, which probably I'll try to explain as we go on. I think you find ways to navigate crisis and to face the disruption. And I personally love disruption, as Dr. Perera said. And I also would like to add the point that when we talk disruption, we talk about business models. And English Teashop was born to challenge an existing sourcing model or a business model, and to showcase that when you think of modern consumer needs, the modern mindful consumer needs, be it in COVID or VUCA or whatever, it is all about understanding customer value chains and bringing in disruption to that value chain in a meaningful way, where you could probably find a niche or maybe take off an incumbent and kind of understand where value is captured or value is created, and kind of carve a niche for yourself by taking off an incumbent or creating a little position. And that's what English Teashop did, and that's what we continued doing throughout the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Suranga. Interesting. I think three of us have a lot of things in common. One thing being premier PIM products, and also I think we all love disruption. I have disrupted my engineering career in switching over to human resources and to academia. So interesting. So I remember when you were teaching us entrepreneurship, you were talking
Yes.
about a gale of creative destruction advocated by Joseph Schumpeter. That was in 1950s. So we have come a long way from Schumpeter's destruction to Clayton Christensen's disruption. So only the destruction has become disruption, but the meaning remains same. It is discontinuity leading to creativity, doing something more meaningful. So coming back to sir, in fact, we were talking about VUCA a couple of times. So it's all about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. In fact, I would argue this is VUCA 1.0. So our response with confidence and competence should result in VUCA 2.0, which is vision, understanding, confidence, and agility. With the right vision, with the right clarity of what's around, and then confidence and agility. That's what we need. Any insights from entrepreneurship point of view, how entrepreneurs should embrace VUCA 2.0 in responding to VUCA 1.0?
Definitely, Professor. Actually, let me also talk in terms of disruption and also destruction, creative destruction. What Schumpeter spoke about, a creative destruction is very radical. It's radical, where you actually really upset a existing market, which is already in equilibrium, and disequilibrate it. Whereas now that kind of innovation is really ideal to counteract VUCA, because you have to break your earlier thinking about things. So you have to destruct yourself totally creatively. But disruptive is actually more suitable, disruptive innovation, more suitable in fairly regular environments where you can slowly move in gradually from one level. Say, for example, if you are in a low market, you enter into a low market, you become a player in a low market, but gradually you focus yourself to a middle market. So then you disrupt the middle market a little bit. So it is very equilibrating. You disrupt it. But again, then you look at the top market. A good example is Apple. How Apple came into the market is or with big players like IBM and Oracle and people like that. But they eventually came in slowly, and they slowly started moving into the middle market, from the middle market to the top market. So basically, I think in counteracting VUCA, you have to really think about a lot of other things. You have to think about people. You have to think about what kind of strategy you're going to use. Because as Suranga was talking about, he had to really look at the entire community that he had on both sides, the consumer community, along the supply chain, the supplier community, the manufacturing community, and the consuming community, and then get the support of all those when you're moving forward. So it's more organic. I think as you were mentioning, VUCA 2 is more organic, right? If I'm not mistaken. So
Yes.
that's the type of thing you have to move into.
Okay, sir. So now let me turn again to Suranga. Suranga, now you would have heard a lot of key terms. I would like you to give some living examples from your own business, from your own survival and success journey so far in the industry of tea. How were these terms were relevant and resourceful for you?
Yeah, I'll probably start with a Sri Lankan context, Prof. Because I guess it's very important that I, kind of pitch this whole idea about why Sri Lankan external sector needs a little revamp, or not a little revamp. We spoke about mindset and growth mindset. I think what Sri Lanka needs is a leapfrog mindset from where we are, because our external sector, performance have been very, very poor. Be it migrant worker remittances, apparel, my own industry, tea, or various other industries and services. We have the same common problem of bringing in really low value addition. Even industries that we think are value added are not really rated highly when you look at the exports complexity, especially the 2018 Harvard Growth Lab study, which shows exports complexity of countries. It is really sad that Sri Lanka's, all of our core exports are ranking very low in terms of value addition. And how do they, rank this? They look at the value that we really add to the commodity, and also the wealth and knowledge we share across supply chains. And we kind of fairly poor now. This is 2018. But the same report says by 2028, Sri Lanka has a chance of getting into the upper quartile of exports complexity, like the top 25% of countries, if we do certain things right. So there is definitely hope. So let me rewind to English Teashop. Beginning of English Teashop in answer to your question, Prof, because in 2010 we killed a fairly successful, award-winning, profitable, complex value-added business when we found this idea for English Teashop, when we came up with this English Teashop mindset, which is very different, because we saw quite a few things, but the two key things that I want to share with you today is what was happening in the marketplace, because the marketplace was a lot of people think that English Teashop is all about an organic brand, and that's the reason for our success here. That's probably one of the reasons, but the real key reason was that we saw an emergence in the marketplaces, because the first 10 years of our business before English Teashop, we were doing about 70 brands to 35 countries, mostly very sophisticated countries in the very premium sectors. So we had a lot of experience handling these sophisticated projects. It was like 70 different MBAs doing them over 10 years. So what we saw was an emergence of a mindful consumer who was very concerned, discerning, and he was looking for exclusive quality without a burden on their conscience. And also they were looking for things like sustainability, provenance, and transparency, around value chains and around food and drink that they were consuming. And we were sitting in an industry, now it's 150, 3-year-old plus industry, where we kind of failed to answer some of these questions. And, to date, I think we live with that same problem, especially look at the bottom of the pyramid, and we are on news every day, the tea industry of Sri Lanka, of not being able to give, a decent livelihood to people in the bottom of the pyramid. So that is when we started really looking at, how we could kind of cater to this mindful consumer who's really going to help us fix problems if we were ready for it. So that is why I, go back to that answer of disrupting, because That was our VUCA 2.0. The beginning of that, beginning of the business was our first VUCA 2.0 experience, where we kind of challenged the auction system. So English Teashop was born as a business to challenge an existing, a century-old business model, and to say, if you are going to be attractive to this new marketplace, you got to be, you can't be working off a commonly shared commodity auction platform. Commodity platforms and what we were seeing in the markets were in two different extremes. So we had to build something out of it. And then in agriculture, it was common sense for us that if we were building something premium and if we were pitching ourselves as a business, as a brand that was building entire communities, that were building sustainability, bringing sustainability to entire livelihoods of our supply chain, we had to move out of the auction, challenge it, and say that there is another way of doing it, directly work with farms and get to something really unknown. Because organic was not our expertise. We didn't have agriculture expertise, neither marketing expertise. So we went into something really unknown, took a massive risk. We in fact took a huge bet on our business, a successful, profitable business, by almost overnight deciding that we are going organic. And why did we go organic? Because someone said the only way to bypass the existing traditional channel is go organic. That way you work directly with the farm. So that's like in a nutshell our first VUCA experience, and then it kept growing from that point onwards.
Interesting indeed, Suranga. Coming back to you, sir, now we have to focus on products and services. And we talk about differentiation, from disruption to differentiation. And as they casually say, if you do the same thing over and over and over again, you get same old result. So you got to change. So the context of COVID-19, in the context of COVID-19, the key importance of differentiation, either products or services. How do you connect entrepreneurship with differentiation?
Yes, it's actually the connection is value creation. It depends on what is valuable at what time. Now, basically, in a COVID situation, there are new problems that people are facing. If you look at the typical, what is your value proposition in the COVID, then you have the differentiation. Because if you keep doing the same thing, you might fail. So therefore, you need to look at the consumer. Who is this consumer? And what are the problems they are facing now in the COVID? So there are problems, they can't move around easily. They have to have social distancing. They have to wear masks and things like that. And also they are finding it difficult to get certain products and services. So those are problems. Then you look at the other aspect of it. What would they gain if you add something new? What would they gain? So there the second part of differentiation comes. What would you add more? What would you add more in terms of value? In terms of value. Now, the word value also, we need to differentiate what it really means. It can be functional value. Functional is sometimes it's difficult to get. It's very rational, and you can answer that question by looking at these answers. But then there are other aspects, like, for example, the sensorial part of value. People need to be happy, they need to be content, they need to be satisfied. Sometimes they need to be happy in a bad situation. So what can the producer do on that part of the sensorial part? So it's the rational part, the sensorial part, you can add value. If you do those two things, what happens is your value proposition will change from the earlier value proposition to a new value proposition. And that's where you differentiate. Of course, one thing is that, like any entrepreneurship thing, when there is always a starter, someone who sees that opportunity first because of his alertness to these changes and what people are sensing and things like that. They're the first mover. But very soon this is seen in a real typical society. You will get the follower. The follower comes in. But actually this innovator, the person who starts this, has to now go to another level. So it's unending, continuous differentiation, and not one differentiation. Typically in a very turbulent environment, you have to continuously differentiate. You can't do it and stay, because immediately it will be followed, because that's a good practice. So people follow good practices. So that is the connection. How you differentiate in a turbulent environment is looking for value propositions that are continuously changing.
Okay, interesting indeed. They say always innovation is followed by imitation. And then the innovators have to innovate continuously in order to beat imitation. We see this very interesting concept in the electronic media where they started stars, producing stars. So one star lead to another copycat star, another star, and star. Now there are lots of star contests in lot of different channels. So coming back to Suranga, now you mentioned that you challenged the century-old auction system in the tea industry, and then you became a first mover. And I'm sure you would have had plenty of challenges in experiencing disruption in order to create differentiated products and services to your selected market segment. So if you could describe some challenges that you had to face, some obstacles where you made them opportunities, basically the barriers that you had to successfully overcome. Some description about, or rather some illustration about those challenges.
Thanks, Prof. I think the onset of the business was like the biggest challenge. The funniest story as well in our history is as we were bold to say that we were building an ethical capitalism related model. Without expertise, both in agriculture and in marketing, we faced quite a lot of challenges when we went into the market. So, imagine, I don't know, there can be tons of examples from others. I'll try to think of some. But, giving our own context is when we became organic, not because of our expertise, right? So we go to this market, we are organic. If you go back in time, 10 years back, international markets, fairly sophisticated markets, especially in mainland Europe. We go and, we have this funky name, English Teashop, which is also, quite too simple for an organic brand. So, we were a complete misfit when we went into those markets, the trade shows, for example, or, when we met customers of, key organic channels or buyers of key organic channels. So, in a nutshell, the biggest challenge we had was to prove that we were serious because we looked too funky, too cool, and too funny. Because our name, our product range, our color schemes, the whole thing was a complete misfit. So the first year was a little struggle to really, get our feet in. But we quickly developed a story for that because where did all this funkiness and coolness and color came in? This came accidental. This was not really a well thought out, disruptive, proposition. It was all the experiences we had doing normal things, very premium, projects across 35 countries for 10 years. And then we made ourselves organic. So what was our learning? We went organic to be ethical, but we missed out all of the core values that organic brands at that time, I'm talking of 2010, 2011, carried and ticked. We failed in most of the, boxes, in organic qualities, in values, the seriousness, the sophistication. It was a complete mismatch. And it was like a nightmare, standing in the middle of all these, serious looking people, brands. And the good thing is the big brands didn't recognize us, didn't really care about us. They would have thought, okay, well, what the heck is this? The name itself was a little deceiving as well because a little too cool for an organic brand. But what it did was, we went with, now, for our ambition was social first, environment second. For organic, it was always the other way. Environment first, social second. And by chance, we had, tipped it the other way. And then we would boldly say that we were this unique business that went organic to challenge a sourcing model and to build people. And there were only very few people who would believe us and listen to us. But what it did was we were projecting, our color schemes, for example. Organic looked extremely boring, natural, earthy, and they were all alike. And then when we put up our stands and products in the middle of a very sophisticated trade show, we would stand out. And then we would not get the serious customers coming in, but we would get customers from premium men, premium department stores who didn't find anything useful, anything that fit their profile in the normal organic domain came to us. That was our beginning. The first 3, 4, 5 years, I think we created a market space for us. Organic gifting was not a big thing, not even a known thing, to be honest. And we were very competitive in our pricing because we were a farm gate to distribution company. We had our own distribution in the UK, in the US. So we were kind of very competitive, handling the whole, gamut of things ourselves. So we got that first opportunity due to, maybe unthought of things, but we were differentiating ourselves without, knowing, but a bit cleverly as well, because the market really connected with us. The new consumer who walked in saw an ethical business who were doing things different. And then It took us at least a good 5-6 years for us to improve on our other organic qualities, organic values, and start ticking all the boxes. And I think by the time the big guns realized that there was this brand who's a little serious and becoming a challenge, we had already settled in. And now we are like a leading established player in the gifting market segment and a growing emerging player in the very serious, sophisticated market segments, giving a really good run for money for the leaders of that segment, including Unilever-owned Pakatis and Royal Vasanin-owned Clipper Teas, Yogis, and Kuspis, and a whole heap of other leading brands. Thank you.
Wow, interesting how a local brand went global, creating a success story. So now we have crossed the halfway mark, and I can see the variety of interesting individuals who have joined us, representing the faculty and the student community, both. That's very encouraging to all of us. And we all call ourselves learning partners, partnering to learn together. It is not student-teacher gap that we maintain. We are all a like-minded community where there's a thirst for learning and thirst for application of that knowledge in order to have value creation. In fact, it reminds me of what Zimmer wrote, referring to the Chinese word Wei Ji. He says the word for crisis in Chinese is Wei Ji, which is written in two characters, Wei and Ji. Wei means danger, Ji means opportunity in Chinese. So every crisis has a danger dimension and opportunity dimension. So are we really exploiting the opportunities which are brought forward by COVID-19 pandemic? I still recall with gratitude my teacher and my mentor, Professor, or rather late Professor Udita Liyanage taught us. When you have an opportunity, you have to sense the opportunity, keep your antennas up and sensing an opportunity, and size the opportunity, quantify, evaluate, check feasibility, whether it is right, and then if the size fits you, then seize it. Grab it before your competitors do the needful. So sensing an opportunity, sizing an opportunity, and seizing an opportunity. So opportunity exploitation. So any insights with regard to entrepreneurs exploiting opportunities in front of them?
Yes, definitely, because this is one of the key competencies of an entrepreneur, among other things being innovation and taking a risk. It starts with seizing an opportunity, seeing an opportunity. Now, the entrepreneur himself, remember, he starts off with a growth mindset. So he is actually having an aim. He wants to expand, or he expand in various ways, maybe power, maybe sometimes expand the social base that he has, or expand his total turnover. It may be anything. So when he has that growth mindset, he is actually alert to opportunities, Everything he is a part of the script that he has made. So alertness, entrepreneurial alertness is one of the key factors. Now we have to remember, again, switching back to what Carol Dweck spoke about the mindset. It's a potential. It's not an inherent thing that you have. You can learn how to see opportunities. You can learn how to see opportunities. You can actually learn things by effort, for example, by practicing and by instruction. Say, if you decide to actually create 2 opportunities every day, for example, you are on the path of that. So it is actually the alertness. One thing is alertness. Other one is sensitive to information from all sources. Information comes asymmetrically. It's not symmetric. Everyone doesn't say the same thing. So there are some people who say something that is more important than the other. And it is an entrepreneur who knows where to see this information rather than the general information that everyone sees. So it may be one narrow area that he sees. So this is another thing, is that prior knowledge. It's a very good thing. Say any entrepreneur, if you see a successful entrepreneur, he has some background to this thing that he's doing, his product. So he has, what he brings around with that is his own personal power, because he has built up social networks maybe sometimes, and he can carry it with him. Even if he's from one organization, he can take it to another organization because he owns that personal power. So very often the social networks, sometimes some personality traits, very often these personality traits like extroversion, for example. Don't be afraid to talk to people. because what happens is you may be an introvert naturally, but you can learn the behavior of an extrovert. What does the extrovert do? So when you go to a party or something like that, you don't target the people you know. You don't target and go there. You go and go to a group you have never met before. Suddenly some new doors open up because some new information comes in from there. Otherwise, you will be in the same gene pool of information. So these are some very important things. Another very important thing here is self-efficacy. The ability to set goals for yourself and the belief that you can achieve it. That is very important. Famous Albert Bandura's concept. Okay. And the main thing is creativity. You can learn to be creative. Actually, sometimes all of us have some kind of intelligence, right? So that creativity will flow from that. It can be visual, it can be auditory, it can be kinesthetic, whatever. So these types give opportunities. And the other one is sensitive to information, as I mentioned earlier. Where do you get this information? This information actually is in various environments. Even in turbulent environment, things are happening in demographics. People are displaced, people are blocked, some people can't move. So there are some demographical changes that take place. So economically, you might find that the income pyramid has changed. So then what do you do about that? Then you have social kind of, in the social environment, people's behavior, social behavior is different. They are sometimes separated from people. Sometimes they have new ways of doing what they were doing earlier. Say, for example, gardening or something is a new habit socially, something like that. Also, there are new technologies that are coming very fast. That's also another source of opportunities. How can you use the technology? Some of the new technologies that are coming, like biometrics and things like that. These are things that can be incorporated into work. So you can see actually how things have changed anyway in delivery and things like that. And the other thing, other area you might see opportunities, what are the political manifestos of that period? What do they want to do? So every political policy, say for example, every government has a different set of policies. Sometimes it may be the same, but there may be pet projects. So in those pet projects, you might actually find a way of starting up. You might be, especially for startups, it might be a good area to see because there may be funding and things like that for that area. And that's very, so opportunities, particularly in a turbulent environment, are more prevalent, and that is the preferred environment of the entrepreneur.
Interesting, sir. In fact, it reminds me of Eric Yuan, the Chinese-born American entrepreneur who is famous for Zoom. In fact, we are using Zoom. He created a big boom through Zoom, and I hope it will be not doom and gloom, but fame and success. So, in fact, when you were talking about political opportunities, now we should be conscious about Saubhagya Dakmo, the vistas of prosperity, where there are lots of encouraging insights for small and medium scale enterprises, for them to show resilience and to revive their businesses, having got affected by COVID and so on. So you need to be conscious. Again, it's sensing opportunities around. So coming back to Suranga, tell me, what is the biggest opportunity you exploited and what made you to go in that path?
I guess, as I said earlier, Prof, the opportunity was complacency of the industry, right? Because they were missing out the big opportunity. I think not just tea, but Sri Lanka is missing out a golden opportunity of higher value addition and branding. And there is, consumer segments, as I said, in our case, for example, the mindful consumer segment, they were looking for, certain things that, we have. And the beauty of our resources, the stories of our people, and the concept that we use as the philosophy of our business, which was launched as Prajava in 2020, the beginning of 2020, the global forum we had with your participation. Both of you were there, in fact, at that time, was all about projecting Sri Lanka's unique story, which is not an easy thing. When you go out with a brand and when you pitch a Sri Lankan, and in this case, a Sinhalese term, Prajava, to reflect on, passion and ability and skill and, authenticity of Sri Lanka's people. was a big risk for us. Because we were banking on this concept and we used different terms for it, over the last 9 years, but then we, settled down with this word Prajava. To me, I think it's a true manifestation of how Sri Lankans get together, especially in crisis, and how we build together and how we evolve together. And look at COVID, and then all the other crises, the problems we've had. But unfortunately, we had not been known to use this concept of building together during good times. And I think it's not down to people, it's down to leaders of both business, academia, and government. I don't think we have led people the right way. So I guess there is a whole heap of opportunities out there for us to capture, and especially to move up in our value addition. And if you're going to add more value to Sri Lanka's resources and talent, there is enough opportunity. So that is what we kind of exploited when we saw what these mindful consumers were looking for. We simply went to them and said, look here. And we were, if I go back in time, the first 4 years of our business, organic is not known to be plastic heavy, packaging heavy, and, color heavy and all that. We were the opposite. With all the negatives that you could think of, even in terms of qualities of product we pack, because Sri Lanka's organic sector had to be revamped from the grassroots. When we took that risk and killed the existing conventional profitable business and went to organic, we had no expertise. I'm not talking about English Teashop. Sri Lanka had no expertise. We had forgotten our organic agriculture, right? You would remember, whenever I come to PIM and we talk of Sri Lanka's potential for organic agriculture. For some good reason, now it has all got revived due to COVID. As Dr. Perera said, an opportunity if people focus on that. But it's not just going organic. Why do you go organic? And what's the end result? And it's the whole game of understanding customer value chain and breaking it down and seeing whether you can take a piece out of it, or whether you can completely replace an incumbent, who's dominating there, and map it out with the consumer, customer value chain, and do that in a way where you kind of understand the value creation, the value capturing, and also taking off value eroding activities and enhancing competitive advantage across your business, not just for yourself, because our principle says we enhance competitive advantage across the value chain. So the Prajava concept is a convergence of all these concepts as to how we projected a business model. It's not just a tea that we are selling, it's a business model that we are selling to our mindful consumer. It was hard for them to believe us, and then for us to get them attracted. But it was patience and building up a story, and building up the comms, building up showing performance as to how much we invest in people, invest in technology, and doing things without expecting immediate returns, and really sharing wealth the right way as it should be. I guess the whole product and service mindset should change from that to understanding customer value chains, and then projecting, finding opportunities, and then using our strengths, especially the Prajava strength, or the community strength that Sri Lanka has, and the brilliant resources we have. And now the organic industry is priming up and growing. Back in 2010, 11, 12, I think the biggest problem I had is convincing our own people, because when I said we're going to kill this and go organic, they said, where are we going to buy our stuff from? So we had to build, including our basic black and green tea, to hundreds of other organic herbs and spices. We went into botanicals because we went into organic. Then only we realized that the Sri Lankan herbs and spices and botanicals organic side of it was very mature than the tea side of it, and we kind of married them together and found that opportunity. So it was just an ethical capitalism or business model that we were pitching at the onset, and it worked. Thank you.
Interesting. I really like the term Prajava, because we are talking about Kaizen, continuous improvement, the Japanese term. I think Prajava will spread around the world with that brilliant concept of shared value creation, where Kramer proposed, and then now it's getting widely popular. So there's a solid Sri Lankan case. I think we have published it among PIM student community, where the Prajava creating value together. I think we have come to the point where we can entertain questions from the audience. You have opportunity of using the chat option. I think there's one Facebook question directed to Dr. Travis. Taridu, am I right? There's a question.
Yes, Professor, before we take that, I believe the same question has been shared in another form by the same student, by the same participant. So the first question is actually towards Dr. Perera, and this is coming all the way from one of our students from Oman. And Dr. Travis, the question is, As Sri Lankans, we produce very high quality apparels to the world's best fashion brands. But unfortunately, we as a country are struggling to create and promote our own fashion brand to the world. Is it because our exporters are narrow-minded, or is it that there are too many barriers in the international apparel industry? I think a very valid question, sir. When you compare with so many other countries, you know, we have the very good capacity and competencies to produce apparel, but where are our Gucci's and Armani's? I think that's the question here in short. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, there are various reasons for that, Taridu. Actually, one reason is, again, switching back to the fixed mindset, that what was done earlier is going to be successful in the future as well, right? So we do have creative people who actually, we have apparel industry, but we have our own designs and things like that. Now it requires the entrepreneur to actually look at the possibilities of trying to take this. There are small entrepreneurs who are doing it, but what really happens is the growth mindset is not very apparent here. If you have a growth mindset, then what happens is you will want to take it on. Now, something about our traditional products also, you talk about masks and things like that, why they might yet not fail is because two reasons. One is, of course, once you put it on the web, the demand will grow. The demand will grow, but the supply cannot meet the demand at that rate of the demand flow. So what really happens is you have to modernize some of our industries. The production processes and things like that need to be modernized. So this is another type of innovation. We are talking about innovation on processes. We have not innovated on processes. We still are used to traditional ways of doing things, and therefore you cannot make that fast enough for the demand. Once the demand grows, so it will fail. Someone else from another country will do it more efficiently. So you can see, you were talking about apparel industry. Apparel industry is a very well developed industry. Fashion industry has developed quite a lot. So we need to find a new way of doing it. More than we have the creativity, we know what the product looks like, but when the demand increases, you cannot, we have to now look at the production side of it. So this is another area for entrepreneurial opportunity, really speaking, for engineers actually to look at the processes and try to develop this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Taridu, any other questions?
Yes, sir. We have one, another long one for Mr. Suranga. Mr. Suranga, the question is, how can an entrepreneur balance the creation, distribution, and the capturing or the claiming of value in a win-win-win manner? For example, a win for the entrepreneur, a win for the consumer, and a win for the society. I think this is what we call this three-dimensional winning of value. Because some entrepreneurs are very unjustly enriched during this disruptive environment. What is your advice to entrepreneurs in taking mind the journey, especially towards winning for the entire community and society and not just for the entrepreneur? What is your message? I think that's a very apt question, Mr. Herat, because everyone is talking about creation of value and talking about the community, but you are one of the few people who moved away from this NATO approach of no action talk only, and you walk the talk in terms of creating value for the entire ecosystem. So you are the best person to, I believe, comment on this.
The textbook question. I wonder why I missed this at the onset itself before the question started. I'll answer this from the model that is very close to our heart, creating shared value. Prof. Falls already made a mention of it. The model put forward by Professor Michael Porter and Mark Kramer. The idea is very simply put: the world's wealth is in our hands. When I say our hands, the private sector. What the governments hold, the NGOs hold is nothing compared to what the private sector holds. And then look at the inequalities, look at the knowledge gaps, look at all sorts of the problems that the world is facing. The message with creating shared value is, what if business people bring sustainability to the core of your business, than leaving it at the perimeter through measures like CSR or philanthropy or NGOs. I'm not undermining any of them, but very, in a very meaningful way. If you can build in sustainability to every action. Now, I go back to, that point about breaking down the customer value chain to understand where value is captured, where value is created, where value is eroded. Well, that's another complex scenario altogether. But I think Doctor alluded to, Apple, for example, as to how they kind of, understood where value is captured and where value is created, and how to, take out value eroding activities, Netflix and Ubers and all sorts of examples are, I think I'm sure everyone is very aware of these things. But what this model creating shared value says is once you work that out in the marketplace, you come back and you kind of divide your business into three sectors. How you deal with your supply, side of things. In our case, the organic farmers, our suppliers, our tons of small-time printers, and people like them. And then internally in your organization, how you kind of redefine productivity, and then how you deal with your market. So what Professor Porter and Professor Mark Kramer argues, and what English Teashop has adopted in our business model, is that we bring sustainability to every action in our business. And to put it in a nutshell, every activity in our business, which is a huge part of our strategy, which gives us a competitive advantage, we got to kind of prove that the investment we make in the farm, for example, is building competitive advantage for them, not to us initially, in a way that we will build competitive advantage. And then we create a virtuous cycle. The society gains, we gain. The environment gains, we gain. And then when you come to the internal operations, redefining productivity, we operate on a concept called the big game. We run on a 100% open book management concept. 15% of our shares are owned by people. Even if not for the share ownership, our company is run on the business of business people concept. Every one of our employee acts like a CEO. And imagine how easy my job is as CEO, especially in a disruptive world when you have like 300 plus people thinking like CEOs and knowing their game, having the line of sight to P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, and then understanding how to create wealth, how to enhance wealth, and how that wealth gets shared, and then creating that virtuous cycle. Same in the marketplace. So in a nutshell, I think this creating shared value concept is the answer to your very, very valid question, because I believe not all profit is equal. Profit made at the expense of society is self-deceiving, but profit that is made in a virtuous way where the society and the environment gain along with you. And if you can prove that your competitive advantage is tagged along to your supply chain, and then when you have this innovation and evolution together, I think that profit is always better than profit that comes at the expense of society. I hope I answered your question.
Excellent thoughts, Mr. Suranga. And with that, I'd like to hand over back to the moderator, Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri.
Thank you, Taridu. Owing to the time constraints, I would suggest I would again come back to Dr. Travis Perera and Ms. Suranga Hearth for your final thought sharing on the very pertinent and very interesting concept of winning the value game, enterprising mindset for ensuring excellence. So some passing remarks, and there are lots of learning partners with your wealth of wisdom that you have carried so far. Any final thoughts for aspiring leaders, budding entrepreneurs, and people who are struggling to survive? Your final message for them.
Yes, my message is that everyone is an entrepreneur inside, basically. You have to put some switches on. That's all that you have to do. The main switch that you have to put on is this growth mindset. Very basically, to understand that through effort, practice, and instruction, you can be an entrepreneur. Basically, or you are not born an entrepreneur. Maybe you sometimes carry a gene that might be useful, but the fact is that you can be an entrepreneur. And remember, entrepreneur does not, today the concept is so wide, it's so broad, it does not mean that you have to start a business. Actually, you can be very entrepreneurial. You can be creative, innovative in an organization. So in an organization like Suranga's, I'm sure there are other entrepreneurs within that, and that is, he has probably bred what we call intrapreneurs, very basically people who are also creative, who contribute creatively. So I think it's a case of putting the switch on. And the second thing is, don't be afraid to take a risk. Very often Sri Lankans are quite risk averse. They would, even the word job in Sinhala is Rakshane, basically, Rakshava, right? It's a kind of Arakshava thing, very basically, you need to not be afraid. You need to sometimes, you need to upset the status quo sometimes if you want to do something. Don't be afraid of that. If they throw you out of the organization, it might be for your betterment, really speaking, right? In the sense that I think there is always a future for everyone who has a growth mindset. Very basically, that is that. Then the other aspect that we are talking about is the COVID. See, the traditional outlook of a typical manager is to hide when something like that happens, you know. But there are people who are like emergent leaders. When something happens, they suddenly get activated. They get activated. So I think you need to be an emergent leader first, and then when you do that, you will see opportunities. If you are actually blind to opportunities, so therefore, even seeing opportunities and exercise every day when you're driving in the car, try to see something new, you know, because you will immediately, when you go home, you might then look for the solution. How would you solve that? So when stating problems alone is not enough, you need to also find what is the solution to that problem. So when you're finding solutions, it may be not a traditional way of finding. It may be something new. So it's very innovative. So I think these three areas of seeking opportunities, being innovative, and taking a risk are excellent, very important things for any entrepreneur, even in a difficult situation like we are facing now.
Thank you very much, sir. You have to go beyond a pensionable job holding mindset in order to have performance and value creation.
Definitely.
Suranga, your final set of thoughts.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I would stick to 2 points. One is an add-on to what I said earlier on the creating shared value mentality. One of the biggest challenges for CSV is the fact that people, you know, a lot of people believe that we are all sustainable. We have built-in sustainability in the core, it's not in the perimeter. I guess it's that mindset that you got to change. And also another challenge that you have is how do you measure success now? How would I, you know, provided I was working for a big conglomerate and I was running this unit on my own as CEO, how would I, you know, justify to the board as to what I'm investing today on the farms would only reap benefits in 3 years, in 4 years. Now that's a big challenge. So this is where you need real mastery in understanding how you bind social and financial metrics together, and you know, find that real balance of presenting sustainability metrics and you know, justifying it. I guess this is one of the biggest challenges that the bigger corporates have. Luckily for us, we don't have that. And the second point I want to make is something that makes me very, very sad when we represent Sri Lanka, you know, been in this business for 22 odd years. You know, we need to really ramp up the aspects of authenticity, ethicality, and transparency as a whole. Branding is the way forward. Whether it's tea, apparel, whatever we do, branding is the way forward. But it's a very, very tough journey out there in the market, because branding is not about having money for advertising or brand building or story or PR or comms. Forget it, because you need to first sell it. And first to go out and be bold and to sell something, you need to have that credibility. And we struggle. We know how much of a struggle that was, because we were not selling someone else's product. We were selling our story. We're selling Sri Lanka's story. And now we've pitched Frajao onto it and are talking of authenticity, ethicality, and transparency, but it's absolutely rare in Sri Lanka. So my message to Sri Lankans, especially to the private sector, before we start blaming the governments and others, because the private sector is the engine, the lead of everything. And if you look at all successful economies of the world, it is the private sectors that have really changed, and the governments have played the lagging role, the catching up. And let's do it here. Let's take the black economy out of it. Let's go corruption free. Let's go open book. Let's do all sorts of things to promote Sri Lanka as the hub for authenticity, ethicality, and transparency. That's the only way. I challenge that there will be no brands out of Sri Lanka if you don't improve this. Trust me. Thank you.
A solid message from a Sri Lankan to fellow Sri Lankans. Thank you, Suranga. Then it gives me immense pleasure to conclude this online discussion series, PIM Monthly Montage. So let me wholeheartedly thank Mr. Tharindu Amarasekara, who came with this concept, and together with our IT team at PIM, who did a wonderful job in making the second monthly montage a reality. Thank you, and Tharindu, over to you for concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Professor, for a wonderfully moderated session, and a big thank you to our excellent panelists. Ms. Suranga Hearth, I think you definitely, just like your tea, you definitely blended in excellently with your corporate experience and your expertise, together with the strategic direction that Dr. Travis Perera set with a solid foundation of so many great management theories. Thank you once again, Dr. Travis Perera, for adding that much required value to this session on winning the value game. Well, my friends, we have come to the end of yet another successful management, or I would say PIM Monthly Montage. And I'm happy to announce, dear Professor, that from the first forum to the second forum, we are seeing 150% or more growth of participation. And I'm extremely thankful for all the participants, all the learning partners who have joined us, despite it being a weekday, despite it being a busy week at the start of the year. You are definitely taking the right steps to win the value game by adding value to yourself and enriching your knowledge so that you can add more value to the enterprises and the businesses you run. And with that, I would like to remind that the third monthly montage will be held in the second Thursday of February, which is the 11th of February. Stay tuned for the details. It's going to be yet another very current, pertinent, relevant, value-adding conversation to your corporate career as well. So do stay tuned to our PIM Facebook and Instagram accounts for more details on that. With that, I would like to wrap up today's monthly montage. I'm Tharanu Amarasekara. Thank you very much for joining in and have an excellent month ahead. I hope this session will help you to win the month of January and 2021, the new year, with the value game, no matter what industry you are in. Wish you all the best. And this is the team from PIM, your nation's management mentor, signing off. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.